Have you ever thought that walking away from a narcissist is the end? The truth is, it's only the first chapter in a much deeper and more turbulent psychological story. When you leave, you don't just withdraw your love, you begin to dismantle an entire false identity built on control, a hunger for admiration and illusions of superiority. In today's video, we're going to expose the psychological stages a narcissist goes through after losing their supply from denial and explosive rage to subtle manipulation disguised as remorse. This isn't a personal attack. It's an educational exploration designed to help you recognize toxic patterns, protect yourself, and avoid being pulled back into emotional chaos. So if you're seeking real insight, healing, and emotional freedom, make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay with us until the very end, because every second will uncover what they've worked so hard to hide. Stage 1. Denial and disbelief. When the narcissist refuses to accept reality, there's a strange moment that happens right after you leave. You're no longer answering their messages. You're no longer showing up to soothe the loneliness they never admitted to having. For you, it might be the beginning of healing. But for the narcissist, it marks the silent collapse of a carefully fabricated world. To outsiders, they may seem unfazed, calm, even indifferent. They might post smiling photos, act busy, or casually tell friends that it wasn't a big deal. But don't let that fool you. Inside, their mind is scrambling, and instead of facing the truth, they choose denial. Denial is the first stage, and arguably one of the most dangerous in the psychological spiral a narcissist goes through after losing their supply. Because to them, you weren't just a partner or companion. You were a mirror, a reflection of their worth, their power, their desirability. Losing you means confronting something they've never been ready for themselves. But a narcissist has no solid inner foundation to lean on. Their identity isn't built on self-awareness, but on reflection. They don't know who they are without someone else's admiration staring back at them. And when that mirror disappears, they're left with a void they have no idea how to fill. So they deny. Not once. Repeatedly. In a loop of thoughts designed to escape the truth. They tell themselves you'll come back, that you're just upset, that you're testing them. Or worse, they rewrite the story entirely. You become the problem. You're selfish, ungrateful, disloyal, because in those rewritten scripts, they still get to be the hero. You'll see them act as if nothing has changed, still texting, still dropping hints like, "This is just a misunderstanding," or "I know you'll forgive me." Not because they believe it, but because they need to believe something, anything, to avoid emotional collapse. During this stage, a narcissist doesn't process loss the way someone emotionally mature would. They don't dig deep, examine their role, or ask themselves, "What did I do wrong?" Instead, they build walls. They rearrange the narrative in their favor to keep the truth from cutting too deep. And this is why so many people hurt by narcissists often feel confused. How can they act like nothing happened? How can they be so unaffected? The answer lies in the nature of denial. It's not just emotional. It's structural. It's their entire defense system in motion. That's why even when reality is obvious, the narcissist continues to live in a parallel universe, one where they are the victim, you're the betrayer, and everything could still go back to how it was. Not because they don't see the truth, but because they refuse to. They won't look. Because seeing would mean facing their shadow, and they've never learned how to do that. During denial, they may even appear oddly kind. You might get messages just checking in or hear them reminisce about the good times. They're not being sentimental, they're testing your boundaries, trying to see if the door is still cracked open. If you respond even with a simple emoji that's a win for them, proof they still have access. If you ignore them, the denial deepens. And now it starts mixing with a quiet rage. She's so cold, they think. He's just playing games. It's never their fault. It never was. Here's what's important to understand. Narcissists don't deny reality because they're naive. They deny it because they can't survive without doing so. Their entire psychological structure can't handle collapse. So denial isn't just a choice. It's their only known method of emotional survival. And that's why you, the one who walked away, might find yourself being pulled back. Not by attraction, but by distortion, guilt, confusion, pity. But remember, you didn't leave to change them. You left to save yourself. Their denial is something they'll have to confront on their own if they ever want to grow. And if they don't, they'll remain stuck in loops of illusion and self-deception. And you don't owe them your place in that loop. Stage 2. Rage and retaliation. When a wounded ego turns into a weapon. When the wall of denial starts to crack. When the truth seeps in, even just through the smallest fracture, the narcissist doesn't crumble the way you might expect. They fight back. And they fight with rage. But this isn't ordinary anger. It's primal, survival-level fury that explodes the moment their ego feels threatened. This is not the grief of lost love. This is the rage of losing power. A narcissist doesn't take defeat well. In their mind, you don't get to end things. You don't get to walk away without granting them the final word. And so their anger isn't just emotional, it's tactical. It's a calculated effort to reassert control, to make you feel fear guilt, or at the very least doubt yourself. You might see it as character assassination. She was always fake. He was such a manipulator. The sweet words they once used to draw you in are now sharpened into weapons. They may smear your name, twist the truth, or outright invent lies. Anything to reclaim the spotlight in the story they're rewriting. And what's more dangerous, they know your soft spots. They once used intimacy to get inside your heart. Now they use that knowledge to dismantle everything you're trying to rebuild. The arms that used to hold you now twist into invisible chains. The words that once made you feel special now serve as ammunition. They may even cause you to question yourself. Was I too cold? Am I being cruel? And if you waver, if you reach out just to clarify, or have one last talk, they win. Not because you still love them, but because you're still reacting. In the narcissist's world, your emotional response, whether it's anger, tears, or justification, signals that their grip is still intact. But your silence. That's the deepest cut. Because silence says you're no longer under their spell. This rage isn't always loud. It's not always explosive. It can be subtle, polished, socially acceptable. They won't always scream in public, but they'll whisper behind your back. They'll plant seeds of doubt in the minds of mutual friends. They'll play the noble victim with just enough nuance. I really tried, but they just don't know how to love. Just enough to avoid being seen as malicious, but plenty to wound you through implication. Their disappearance doesn't mean they've moved on. It means they're plotting. You might not hear from them for months, and then suddenly a cryptic comment, a song sent to your inbox, a new public relationship tailor-made to provoke you. You'll see them smiling, but that smile isn't peace. It's pride. The pride of someone who thinks they've won the final round. But here's the tragedy: while you're healing, growing, learning to love and trust again, they're still trapped in the same cycle, fighting an enemy that lives in their own reflection. The narcissist's rage doesn't make them powerful. It exposes their weakness, their deep dependency on others to prop up a sense of self that can't stand alone. But if you're not careful, you can get dragged back into the chaos, unsure who's manipulating whom or what's even real anymore. That's why in this stage, your silence is your power. Don't explain. Don't justify. Don't try to be the bigger person. Every reaction from you becomes data they will use for their next move. Let them rant. Let them twist the narrative. You don't need to correct them. Your life, your peace, is the correction. Because in the end, narcissists don't fear losing your love. They fear losing their mirror, the reflection of control and illusion they crafted through you. Stage 3: Bargaining and Manipulation. When the narcissist puts on the mask of change. After the waves of denial and the storm of rage, the narcissist enters a deceptively calm phase. No more shouting, no more overt blame. Everything seems quieter, and that is precisely when you should be most cautious. Because when they can no longer threaten you back into their grip, they seduce, not with old charm, but with a new mask, the mask of transformation. They know you're tired by now. You've had enough of the chaos. And they exploit that exhaustion by becoming unusually gentle. Their words now sound softer, more reflective. I've done a lot of thinking. You're the only one who's ever made me see myself clearly. I truly want to make this right. It sounds like growth, but this is manipulative bargaining in disguise. The narcissist doesn't apologize to heal. They apologize to negotiate. If you forgive, if you return, if you give them one last chance, then they don't have to face the collapse within. If you come back, it means they still have value. They still matter. Their ego gets a lifeline. And that's why they'll say exactly what you once longed to hear. Not because they believe it, but because they know you once did. They'll bring up your sweetest memories, your inside jokes, the songs you shared, not because they cherish those moments, but because they know memory is where your heart is most vulnerable. They haven't changed. They've just upgraded their performance. You'll see them try going to therapy, reading self-help books, posting deep, thoughtful quotes on social media. But if you look closely, you'll notice something odd. These actions rarely last. And even when they do, they often feel more staged than sincere. They'll post a photo holding a book, but never speak about what they've learned. They'll claim they're in counseling, but can't remember the therapist's name. Because the goal isn't self-awareness, it's to make you believe they're evolving. In this stage, the narcissist becomes an expert at tapping into your leftover empathy. They won't attack. They'll make you feel guilty for not giving them a second chance. They'll cry, write letters, even suggest they're not sure they want to live, all of it sounding heartbreakingly real. But if you really pay attention, you'll see the pattern. Everything is still about them. Their pain, their loss, their struggle to live without you. But rarely, very rarely, will they ask, "How did I hurt you?" And if they do, that question is often a setup for the next line. But you also have to understand, this is the phase where many people return because it feels like sunlight after a storm. But remember, this false light is more dangerous than darkness, because in darkness you know to guard yourself. But when the light shows up, you soften, you hope, and that's when you're most vulnerable. You may think, maybe this time is different. But if the change is fueled by fear of losing you, not by a sincere internal awakening, then it isn't growth. It's survival strategy. And once the narcissist believes they've regained your loyalty, once they're certain you won't walk away again, the cycle returns. The silence, the control, the emotional punishment, the blame, all the toxins return. Only now they run deeper, because this time you walked back in. And when you realize it, when you try to leave again, it's harder. Because now you're not just escaping them. You're escaping the guilt, the false hope, and the carefully crafted promises that once pulled you back in. During the bargaining stage, remember this genuine transformation doesn't come with a script. A truly remorseful person won't try to sell you a better version of themselves. They'll step back, listen, and begin changing without needing applause. But the narcissist, they'll do anything just to be the main character in your story once more. To stage 4, depression and emptiness. When the narcissist faces themselves with no one left to perform for, there comes a phase that arrives slowly but heavily, where all the tricks have failed, the promises no longer work, and every attempt to win you back has vanished into silence. When there's no one left to react, when the spotlight fades and the audience stops clapping, the narcissist falls into the state they fear the most: absolute stillness. And in that stillness, the scariest part is not losing you, it's that they no longer know who they are without someone to perform for, without someone to manipulate, without an eye to control, without a target to blame. They are left face to face with something they've spent a lifetime avoiding, their real self, empty, disconnected, and never built on anything solid. This isn't the depression of someone who loved deeply and lost. This is the collapse of identity. Because narcissists were never truly attached, they depended on you as a mirror that validated their existence. With you gone, what remains is not longing. It's a void they have no idea how to fill. They may become quiet, but not in a healing way, not in reflection. This is a different kind of silence, a psychological numbness, a shutdown, a kind of collapse that comes with no tears and no dramatics, just apathy. Because without someone else's light shining on them, they no longer know which way to turn. During this phase, they may act strange. Some disappear completely from social media. Others show up too often, posting lifeless photos or hollow captions. They might bury themselves in work, jump into another relationship, or spiral into self-destructive habits. But whatever they do, it's never about growth. It's about escape. An escape from the truth that there is no one home inside. From the outside, this stage can look like awareness. You may find yourself thinking, maybe now they really get it. Maybe now they finally feel something real. But the truth is, what they're feeling is not remorse. What they're experiencing is the terror of being left alone in the dark with only the echo of the truth they've always denied. And here's where your empathy may betray you. If you're someone with a soft heart, you may see this pain and wonder, should I go back? Should I help them through this? But pause, because their pain, while real, is not a sign of change. Narcissists can fall into depression, but that doesn't mean they're evolving. Their sadness is the byproduct of losing control, not the beginning of self-awareness. They're not crying because they've realized their faults. They're suffering because they lost the one person who once made them feel important. In this state, they often feel directionless, lost. But instead of using that emptiness to rebuild their inner world, they usually go searching for a new source, a new person to wear the mask for, a new mirror to validate them. And if they can't find anyone new, they withdraw. They function, but there's no spark. They might go to work, maintain surface-level conversations, but there's no soul behind their eyes. Because what they lost wasn't love, it was the supply you once gave them. A kind of emotional fuel they cannot generate on their own. And that's the biggest difference between someone who's hurt and someone who's narcissistic. The hurt person feels pain and grows. The narcissist feels pain and runs. And during this depressive state, what they learn is not how to change, but how urgently they need a new fix. If you return during this phase out of pity, hope, or the belief that maybe they finally understand, you're not stepping into a new relationship. You're stepping back into the same cycle with the same person, only this time you'll be more exhausted because now you know, you saw, and you walked back in anyway. Remember, a narcissist's silence is not contemplative. It's the pause after the curtain drops, but the actor refuses to leave the stage because they have no idea how to live without the script. Stage 5. Hoovering. When the narcissist comes back, not out of love, but because they can't accept losing access to you. There's a common misconception many people have after leaving a narcissist that silence means closure. That if they stop texting, stop calling, stop showing up, they've finally moved on. But with narcissists, silence doesn't always mean the end. Sometimes it's just a strategic retreat, a pause before something familiar and dangerous hoovering. Hoovering, like the vacuum cleaner it's named after, is the narcissist's attempt to suck you back into their sphere of control. But this time it's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's disguised. You've started your new life. Maybe you're healing, smiling again, finding joy in things you had once given up. And then out of nowhere they reappear. Not with an apology, but with something familiar. A song you once shared. A casual message, a like on your photo, no pressure, no demands, just a nudge. And that's where the danger begins. It's not connection, it's reconnaissance. The narcissist isn't coming back because they've changed. They're coming back because they can't stand the idea that they've lost access to you. In their mind, you're not a person with boundaries. You're a resource, and no one likes being locked out of something they once controlled. During hoovering, they're not trying to win your love. They're trying to win your response. A single like, a short reply, a casual coffee meetup. Because to them, any response equals relevance. They don't need your affection, they just need proof that they still have reach. You'll notice they're now gentle. No more demands. No manipulation, at least not overtly. They say things like, "Let's just be friends," or "I just want to know you're okay." But this is bait. Because if you say yes even as a friend, they've got their foot back in the door. And from there, they'll quietly work to expand that space. You might think you're strong enough now, that it's harmless. It's just a text. But hoovering doesn't require your full surrender. It only requires you to crack the door. And once you do, the narcissist doesn't stop at the threshold. They seep back in slowly, subtly, until they're occupying emotional real estate you thought you'd reclaimed. One of the most cunning aspects of hoovering is that they don't try to stir up intense emotion like before. They try to create a sense of harmlessness. And when you feel they're no longer dangerous, you lower your guard. You smile at their message. You feel a flicker of comfort that at least they still think of me. And that's when you're drawn back in, not through shock, but through inches of emotional erosion. A narcissist hoovers not because you're special, but because your absence has left a gap in their control map. And they need to fill it, if not with someone new, then with you. They don't need you to love them. They just need you to not disappear completely. They may hoover you weeks after the breakup. Maybe months, even years. They don't track time with calendars. They track it with power. When they sense you've finally found peace, that's when they can't take it anymore. And they'll return not to love, but to interrupt the rhythm you've just started to enjoy. The only way to survive hoovering isn't to explain clearly or to have one last talk. It's to not respond at all. Silence, steadiness, boundaries. Because if you still feel the urge to say just one more thing, the door is still open. Hoovering is not late love. It's emotional trespassing wrapped in the gift box of delayed kindness. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself living in reaction to them again instead of in devotion to yourself. Stage 6. Projection and blame when you become the villain in the story. They rewrite. There comes a point once all paths to return have been closed, once you no longer respond, once you've refused to be pulled back into the game where the narcissist reaches for something familiar, they need someone to blame. And that person almost inevitably will be you. Because in the world of a narcissist, accountability is a burden they refuse to carry. They can tolerate being abandoned, They can even endure loneliness for a while. But what they cannot endure is the idea that they were the reason it all fell apart, that they were the problem. So they rewrite the narrative, not to reflect, not to heal, but to avoid, not to forgive, but to restore the image of themselves they're desperate to preserve. And to do that, they need a perfect villain. You. In the story they tell others and often themselves, you're no longer the person who loved them deeply. You become the cold one, the betrayer, the one who was never satisfied, emotionally unstable, or worse, the real narcissist. You'll hear lines like, I gave her everything, but she always wanted more. He manipulated me the whole time. She was the toxic one, I just didn't see it. Sound familiar? Because projection is the narcissist's distorted mirror, one they use to reflect everything they refuse to accept in themselves onto someone else. They can't bear to see their selfishness, control, or lack of empathy, so they cast those traits onto you. They offload the ugliest parts of themselves by assigning them to you, not because they don't know the truth, but because they refuse to live with it. And the tragic part, if you once loved this person, if you're the kind of person who questions yourself, who empathizes deeply, you might start to believe parts of the story they're telling. You may find yourself wondering, was I really too harsh? Did I hurt them more than I thought? Maybe they're right. And that is exactly the purpose of projection, to destabilize your sense of self, to make you question memories that were once clear, to leave you confused about who hurt whom and when the roles started to reverse. At this stage, the narcissist isn't just protecting their ego, they're manipulating the perceptions of those around you. They may sow doubt within your mutual friends, your social circle, even your professional network. They don't need everyone to side with them. They just need you to stop trusting your own truth. And that's where your real work begins, holding on to your internal clarity. Because no one else knows the full story like you do. No one else felt the subtle manipulation, the emotional pressure, the nights you cried in silence except you. And if you allow their projection to creep into your belief system, you won't just lose your trust in them, you'll start losing trust in yourself. Blame for the narcissist is a form of survival, not because they aren't at fault, but because if they are, the whole world they've constructed collapses. And to prevent that, they'll cast you as the one who's guilty. Even if you walked away in peace, even if you said nothing, even if you forgave them quietly and moved on with grace, they will still pull you into the role they need you to play, the one at fault. But you're no longer auditioning for that role. You chose a different path, one that doesn't rely on manipulation or performance, or needing to win in the game of who was more right or more wrong. You chose freedom, and that always unsettles the narcissist. Stage 7: replacement and image repair when they flaunt. Happiness. To mask their inner fractures. After all their attempts to pull you back, the denial, the rage, the emotional manipulation, the blame, when none of it works, the narcissist doesn't sit down to reflect or learn. They choose a faster, easier, and far more performative route. They find someone to replace you. Make no mistake, this isn't healing. This isn't healthy moving on. It's a calculated image rebuilding campaign, a rebranding of the self. And you'll see it, quickly, loudly, publicly. Photos holding hands with someone new, romantic check-ins, captions about lessons from the past, and learning to value what matters. They might even get engaged, married, or start a family, all carefully staged to scream, "I'm fine. In fact, I'm happier than ever." But if you look closely, you'll see none of it is about the new person. It's all about you, the posts, the displays, the sudden outbursts of performative joy. They're all subtle messages aimed at you. I don't need you. I've already replaced you, and I want to make sure you know it. This isn't love. This is retaliatory performance. Because if they were truly healed, they wouldn't need to prove anything at all. Narcissists can't tolerate the reality that you left without giving them control over the narrative. So if they can't rewrite the past, they'll rewrite the present. And the version they create always starts with one message: they're thriving and you're irrelevant. To outsiders, they may appear to have grown, but you, the one who was truly close, will notice the same patterns recycled. The same intense idealization now transferred to someone new. They'll call it fate, healing, the love they've been waiting for, but it's just the same cycle: idealization, control, disappointment, discard. Only the cast changes, the script remains the same. And this is where it can hurt you, not because you still love them, but because you feel so easily replaced. You might find yourself wondering, how did they move on so fast? What does this new person have that I didn't? Was I the problem all along? The answer is you weren't. The new person isn't better. They simply arrived when the narcissist needed a new character to fill the role. They haven't yet realized they've stepped into the same storm you once did. And chances are they will be hurt the same way eventually. But that's not your responsibility anymore. What you must remember is this: being replaced quickly doesn't mean you weren't good enough. It means they weren't deep enough to process loss. They moved on not out of love, but out of emptiness. Not to connect, but to avoid confronting the truth that no one stays when control replaces intimacy. You are not the loser in this story. You are the one who chose to exit the performance while the new person hasn't yet realized they're on stage. They can flaunt as much as they like. But you, the one reclaiming your peace, rebuilding trust, and learning to love again without permission, you are the one truly free. Stage 8. False acceptance and strategic withdrawal. When the calm isn't the end, just the setup for what comes next. After every tactic has failed, from emotional manipulation to performative happiness, from explosive rage to rushed healing love stories, you might notice something: the narcissist suddenly goes quiet. No messages, no cryptic social posts, no accidental run-ins, no drama. And if you've endured the cyclical chaos of a narcissistic relationship, you may feel a wave of relief. You might think they've finally let go. But be careful, because not all silence is surrender, especially not with a narcissist. In their world, withdrawal doesn't mean resolution. It means recalibration. You see, if there's one thing narcissists do masterfully, it's pretending not to care while obsessively monitoring from the shadows. Their silence isn't peace, it's patience. It's a pause, not a parting. It's the quiet before the next strategy. This is the stage that deceives the most people, because it doesn't look like manipulation. It doesn't feel like abuse. It masquerades as maturity, respect, closure. But underneath that mask lies a question that never truly left their mind. Can I still get back in if I wait long enough? You may believe they've changed. You may see them moving on, not mentioning you, not hinting at the past. But the moment you shine, when you succeed, love again, or appear genuinely free, they often reappear. Not to reconcile, but to disturb the rhythm they can no longer control. This is the retreat to advanced strategy, not in romance, but in psychological warfare. Because when you feel safe, you loosen your guard. And one day, when you least expect it, you get a just checking in text, a like on a post, a birthday message, a smiley face. And if you respond even lightly, they know the game is still alive. Here's what's vital to understand: a narcissist's silence isn't growth. It's a new tactic after the old ones lost their power. Because to them, winning doesn't mean being loved. It means making sure you never fully escape. This is when you must check in with yourself. Is your current peace truly rooted in healing, or is it just surviving the silence they've left behind? Have you truly closed that chapter? Or are you still secretly hoping they stay gone as if that would prove something? Remember, narcissists rarely release what they once controlled. They preserve access, waiting for the right excuse to re-engage or sabotage. If you've survived the prior stages, this one requires the most discipline. Don't confuse absence with acceptance. Narcissists may learn to go quiet, but they almost never learn how to let others be truly free. And true freedom is when you no longer need their silence to feel peace. After 8 stages: denial, rage, bargaining, depression, hoovering, blame, replacement, and strategic withdrawal, you can finally see what this truly was. A relationship with a narcissist is not a tragic love story. It's a psychological cycle designed to keep you trapped in confusion, self-doubt, and the illusion that you were never enough. The deepest pain isn't just the harm they caused. It's when you started believing you somehow deserved it. But you stepped out. You faced the truth. And that is what they never expected. Healing doesn't mean forgetting them. Healing means looking back at the entire story without needing to rewrite it, without needing to win, and simply feeling grateful you woke up. You no longer need their validation. You don't need an apology. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. True freedom doesn't begin when the narcissist walks away. It begins when you stop waiting for them to change, stop trying to understand why, and stop asking yourself if you could have done anything differently. You don't have to fix the past. You just have to stop letting it dictate your future. If there's one truth to carry with you from this journey, it's this: you weren't wrong for loving. You were only wrong to believe that love could heal someone who never intended to grow. Now take everything you've learned, not to build walls, but to build pillars. Not to fear people, but to recognize who truly deserves access to your heart. And most importantly, never confuse familiarity with safety, chaos with passion, or obsession with love. A narcissist cannot destroy you if you stop handing them that power. And from this moment forward, you are no longer their victim. You are the survivor, the awakened one, the one who walked away. And there is no need to ever look back.